So today I'm going to talk about the movies. I'm going to talk about how they get made, who gets to make them, how they get promoted, and then I'm going to explain how we talk about them, how we describe them once we've seen them. So you're going to get to learn a whole bunch of useful vocabulary that's going to help you when you want to talk about films. But before we get into all of that, I'm going to talk for a few moments about subtitles. You know, the words, the captions at the bottom of the screen. But it's going to be more interesting than it sounds. Trust me. Now, as you may have seen, there's a subscribe button in that corner of the screen. It'd be great if you press that. But in the meantime, let's just get into it. So, I'm going to talk about subtitles. But I'm not going to talk about those subtitles you see when you're watching a foreign movie. Rather, I'm going to talk about the use of subtitles when native English speakers need subtitles to understand movies that have been shot in English. There are two quite famous British examples. One is Trainspotting, which is set in Edinburgh, and the other is the full Monty, which was set in the Yorkshire city of Sheffield. Now, American audiences struggled to understand those accents simply because they hadn't really heard them before. Now, us Brits on the other side of the Atlantic, we grew up watching loads and loads of US movies and TV shows, and for this reason most British people can differentiate fairly easily, say, between a New York accent and an accent from the American Deep South. However, increasingly people are beginning to complain that they can't understand what's being said in mainstream movies. The Christopher Nolan directed movie Tenet is a case in point. If you look on the internet, there are loads of English native speakers complaining that they can only understand about 50% of the dialogue and that really they need subtitles to understand what's going on. So why would this be? I think one of the causes is the change in style of cinema acting over the course of cinema's history. When the talkies, as they were first known, came out, obviously nobody had any experience of talking on screen in cinema. The actors either came from silent movies or from the theatre. Actors who had a background in silent movies obviously used very exaggerated expressions to make themselves understood on screen, whereas actors coming from a theatre background were used to enunciate and pronounce their words very clearly in order to be understood at the back of a theatre. Is this a dagger I see before me? They speak very clearly indeed. However, over the course of cinema's history, there has been a change in the style of acting. Now, if you look back at old black and white movies, the style of acting seems very mannered. It seems very contrived to us now. However, it does have the benefit of being very easy to understand. Now, everything probably changed with Marlon Brando. Now, Marlon Brando was probably the first famous American actor to follow the advice given by the Russian theatre actor Stanislavski. Now, Stanislavski thought that rather than deliver a performance, an actor rather should inhabit the character that they were playing. And as such, their style of acting became much more naturalistic, but at the same time, quite difficult to understand. Now, I have some personal experience of this because when I was 18, I got the chance to spend an afternoon with Al Pacino, famously a method actor, someone following this same school of thought whereby an actor should inhabit their character. In 1985, I was an extra in this movie Revolution. It was a massively expensive and incredibly unsuccessful historical drama based around the American War of Independence, and its main star was Al Pacino. And one afternoon during the shooting of the movie, I got to spend about 2 hours sat shoulder to shoulder with Al Pacino while he prepared for a scene with the director of the movie, Hugh Hudson. And I could hear their conversation quite clearly because I was really sat that close. But as soon as the cameras started rolling and Al Pacino started acting, I couldn't understand a single word that he said. It was just mumble, mumble, mumble. Now, it might have seemed very realistic on screen, but it was damned hard to understand what was going on at all. So, returning to the subject of Tenet by Christopher Nolan, why is it that English-speaking audiences are having so much difficulty understanding an English-speaking movie? Well, I think one of the principal reasons is that the modern generation of actors have been very heavily influenced by the likes of Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. And as such, in their performances, they're trying to act in a naturalistic manner rather than trying to make themselves more readily understood. And added to that, in your typical Christopher Nolan movie, you have a very noisy, dense musical soundtrack and lots of sound effects and explosions as well. And so, if you're struggling to understand what's going on in Tenet, The Dark Knight, or Interstellar, then you're not alone. There's plenty of native English speakers who are putting on the subtitles as well. All movies start with a script. Now, a script is all the dialogue that is going to appear in the movie and the basic stage directions. Now, a script can either be an original screenplay, something written specifically for the movies, and that would include, for example, Pulp Fiction, that was written by Quentin Tarantino, or Good Will Hunting, which was written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Or a script could be an adaptation, usually of a book. So the Harry Potter movies are obviously adaptations of the Harry Potter books. It could also be an adaptation of a comic, such as the Marvel series of Avenger movies. Now, once someone has got a script, they need to pitch it, they need to sell it to a producer. Now, a producer is a very powerful figure in the movies who puts together the finance for a project. And typically, people that pitch their idea to a producer only have a few minutes in which to do so. And sometimes you'll hear the expression an elevator pitch, a pitch so short and condensed that you can tell it to someone between floors of an elevator. Sometimes it's also called the log line. The idea is to describe the whole movie in as short a space as possible. Now, here's an absolutely brilliant example of an elevator pitch or log line that was written for Jaws, and I'll read it out to you. A police chief with a phobia for open water battles a gigantic shark with an appetite for swimmers and boat captains, in spite of a greedy town council who demands that the beach stays open. Now, that is a brilliant piece of compressed writing, gets the whole movie into one single sentence. So we can divide the people that make movies into two groups, those that are in front of the camera and those that are behind the camera. Now, obviously, it's the actors that are in front of the camera. And I should mention at this point that we don't really use the word actress in English any longer. We have male actors and we have female actors. But either way, at the top of the hierarchy of actors are the stars, the movie stars. Now, they're people that may not be the best actors from a technical perspective in any film, but they're the most famous actors. So one of the biggest movie stars at the moment in the world is Dwayne Johnson, otherwise known as The Rock. Now, whenever he's in a movie, millions upon millions of people want to go and see those films. So he never has to audition for parts. Rather, his agent just takes phone calls from directors asking him if he's prepared to be in their films. So the star is really important commercially in terms of the success of a movie. Now, underneath the stars, you have supporting actors. Now, a supporting actor in a movie may have a lot of screen time and they may have a lot of dialogue, but they're not a star in their own right. Sometimes they're called character actors because they're known in the industry to be able to provide a performance for a certain type of character, such as a crooked, a corrupt policeman, for example, or a hilarious best friend. Now, below the supporting actors, then we get to those people who have got walk-on parts. These are actors who simply get 1 or 2 lines in the movie, and they might not even get a name in the script. They might simply be woman in supermarket, man on train. And then at the lowest of the low, we have extras, people that are employed just to create crowd scenes, or in my case, 18th century battle scenes. And collectively, everybody that's in a movie is known as the cast. That's everybody that's in it. So now let's turn our attention to the people behind the camera. Now, the most important person by far is the director, and the director is the person that has got the whole vision for the entire project, for the entire film. Now, even though they don't appear in their own movies, big movie directors can become very famous in their own right. Think Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg. Working closely with the director is the cinematographer, or director of photography, or DP for short, the person responsible for all of the camera work on a movie. Then you have a production designer, and that's the person who's responsible for the look of the sets and the scenes in the film. So they might have to design a futuristic spaceship or a medieval banquet, and they'd be responsible for the look of the overall film, the props, those are the things that are in it, and also all of the costumes. Then you have the gaffer, and the gaffer is responsible for the lighting and the electricity. I don't know if you've ever seen a film set, but lighting is incredibly important to movies. The last really important role behind the camera is that of the editor, the person who sits in the production suite and takes all of the footage that has been shot and puts it together as a completed film. So now that our movie studio has got a completed movie, it now needs to go and promote it. Now, movie studios have one big advantage over other types of product in that they've got stars, famous people that are actually in the movie itself. So they make the maximum use of those stars when they're promoting the movie. And they tend to do 3 big events around the launch of a movie. The first is the premiere. That is when the movie is first screened to an invited audience of guests before it's open to the public. And here, it's often called a red carpet event. So the stars will walk from their taxi or their limousine along a red carpet whilst being photographed by the paparazzi before entering the cinema. And here is an opportunity for all the news channels to get some footage and effectively promote the film on behalf of the movie studio. The next thing the studio can do is arrange a press junket. Yes, you heard that right, a press junket. That is when the actors in a movie have to spend 1 or 2 days in a luxury hotel in a big city such as New York, London or Paris, answering questions from all sorts of different journalists from TV stations, newspapers, magazines and websites. And famously, actors hate doing the press junket because they get asked the same questions over and over again. But the press junket is an excellent way of giving the media access to the movie stars in an accessible manner. The last thing the movies can do to launch their films is to get their stars on the big TV shows, to have an interview and to talk about the movie at the same time. Now, the biggest one in the UK is the Graham Norton show. It goes out on the BBC on Friday nights, the Graham Norton show. And because Graham Norton has such a big audience in the UK, he can attract the biggest US stars. So we've just seen a movie and we want to talk about it with our friends. And broadly, we can divide movies into three parts. The plot, that's the story, what happened. The production values, what the thing actually looked like. And the performances, how good or bad the actors were in the movie. So let's start with the plot. And one of the great things about talking about movies in English is we always talk about them in the present tense. So I could describe Star Wars like this. Luke, an orphan farm boy, is radicalized by a group of ideologically driven freedom fighters and persuaded to blow up a military installation, causing huge loss of life. All in the present tense, and we always describe movies like that, never in the past tense, which makes talking about them actually quite easy. Now, the next thing to talk about is production values. And the biggest difference between movies is whether they were big budget or low budget movies. And it's quite easy to tell the difference between the two. So a big budget movie would be something like an Avengers film, where it's got lots of star names in the film, lots of special effects, lots of different locations. Clearly something that was very expensive to produce. On the other hand, you might go and see a low-budget horror movie, something that was shot on one location with 3 or 4 barely known actors. Finally, we want to talk about the performances of the actors. And we don't just simply want to say whether they were good or bad. We want to give a bit more detail when we're talking to someone. So when we're talking about a poor or bad performance in a movie, we might say that an actor was wooden. This means that they really weren't very expressive. Literally, it was as though they were made from wood. On the other hand, an actor can act and over-emote in a movie, and then we'd say that they were hammy. To be hammy is when someone is overacting and maybe they're smiling too much and all of their facial expressions are just over-exaggerated. But just about the worst thing that you can say about a movie actor is that they phoned in their performance, They seemed so disinterested in being in the movie that they may as well have delivered their performance by phone. However, if we want to say an actor was good, we've got a lot of different words we can use. We could say that a performance was mesmerising. When a performance is mesmerising, we can't take our eyes off an actor. Now, if their performance was really exciting, we can say it was electrifying, for example. It was electrifying or sparkling. These are ways of describing performances that are really engaging and exciting. However, in a more serious movie, much more likely in a drama than in a screwball comedy, if we really believe in the part that an actor is playing, we'd say it is an Oscar-worthy performance. Worthy of an Oscar-worthy performance. That's when an actor is really at the top of their game. So that was my take on the movies, and I really hope that you've picked up some vocabulary that you can use the next time you want to talk about film with your friends. I want to thank you for watching and also ask you to hit that subscribe button given that you've made it this far through the video. Take care, I'll catch you on the next one.